G'day guys, how's it going? The office is getting there. The office is getting there. I thought I would give you a little look here at the sort of green wall that I'm working on at the back here behind my chair and computer and everything. I've got some succulents over here on the windowsill, and yeah, a bunch of my poles here behind me as well. I'm working on lighting. I think I'm going to get some lights up the top here to sort of, I was about to say spray, but I think shine is probably a better verb. Shine the light down upon these guys and get them to grow. But we'll see how we go. Yeah, again, I'm still thinking about giving you guys a proper tour of the place, but I just don't know where to start, guys. I just need to suck it up and just get going, but I have a feeling it's going to be like hours and hours long, though. If it were me, I probably wouldn't be complaining. I'd be like, yes, you know, content from creators that I enjoy, and it's hours and hours and hours worth of just seeing their plants. So yeah, I'll work it out one of these days, guys. Soon enough. Anyway, today is plant chores. I've got a bunch of shiznits that I have to get done, and I think we'll just see where the day takes us. Yeah. All right, so first up, I think we're going to do some air layering, and I kind of really like the method from Kevin, Hakuna Planta on YouTube. You probably know him. If you don't, check out his channel. I'll try and remember to link it below. He uses Ziploc bags that he cuts the bum out of, or cuts the side down and then wraps it around the plant, Ziplocs it up, and yeah, uses that to hold the sphagnum moss around the plant when he is air layering. I found that to be really useful, especially for some of the plants that are going to really grow large roots. So I've got a bunch of stuff that we will get up here. We'll have an investigation, have a look at them and see what needs doing. And I've had to go out and buy myself a new stapler because we've just moved house, as you guys will probably know if you've seen the previous videos. And we've still got a bunch of boxes to open up and unbox, obviously. And I don't know where my staplers are. So I just went out and got another one, $7. What can you do? You can never have enough staplers, right guys? And I should clean this place up. Okay, so the first victims today are going to be these Florida Beauties that I purchased a little while ago from the person I got my original obliqua from. So if you have checked out I think it was an unboxing I did with a Monstera elbow cutting and talked about how to pick the right elbow cutting, go check that out up here. But I got it from the same seller. He had a bunch of these going and they were only $450 each. And I say only because I had been watching auctions going on in some private Facebook groups that were for collectors, and people were spending over $900, $1,000 a plant for something smaller than this. So I ended up getting these two combined for $900 as an investment, and they are the white variegated beauties. That was why they were going for such a high amount. Both of these, I assume they're cuttings from the same original plant, are white variegated Florida Beauties. So yeah, extremely rare here in Australia and highly sought after by collectors. I don't think the average plant punter is going to know much about the difference between these and the standard yellow ones, and they'll probably prefer the yellow ones, but yeah. Anyway, long story short, invested in these guys and I want to air layer them. As you'll see, they're kind of leggy, so that's good for air layering. You know, there's a bit of space here. Internodal spacing's quite large. And so what I think I'm going to do is use one of these bags and probably do 2 nodes at a time. So I might do the whole of this bottom section down here, and they probably need to be staked up a bit better. I can see there is a tiny little stake here, but it's sort of leaning on its side, so I might... Yeah, useful. Really useful. How does he feel? He feels pretty stable, so maybe he'll be all right. We'll see how he goes. I'm thinking, yeah, it should be okay, especially once I've air laid it. The moss sitting in the bag should give a bit of stability because it'll be sort of in contact with the soil at the bottom. So yeah, we've got these two, and this one has, what have we got here? One node is sort of at soil level, so it's probably going to be sending roots down into the soil, so I don't need to worry about that. And then 2, 3, 4, but probably only need to do 2 and 3 here. Air layer those, so I can probably do that with 1 or 2 bags, 2 at most. And then this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes above the soil, so that might be 2 bags worth that we end up using. I'm really just thinking, do I stake this guy up or not. He seems to be pretty stable. So fingers crossed. I guess we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it if it becomes a problem. Anyway, so I'm gonna go grab my moss and I'll be back. I'm laughing, guys, because my kids keep playing with this spider. It looks like an Australian huntsman. If you guys have seen these are about life size. The huntsmans can actually get quite bigger than this. And they're pretty, large, kind of freaky spiders, but they're really kind of puppy dogs. You'll see them inside. They'll get into your house, usually in the sort of warmer months. And they're tree climbers, hence the kind of long legs and the flat body. They stick to the tree and they climb up. So you'll often find them in the corner of your houses here in Australia, pretty much everywhere in Australia, I think. There'll be different species, but we always grew up with them down here. And as a family, we used to just leave them alone because they kill the bugs in the house and they're tree climbers, so they stay up high. You don't often see them just crawling along the ground. They don't do that. They're sort of always up high if you see them. They come inside and instantly go to the roof. And so I grew up not being freaked out by them. My wife has a spider phobia though, and absolutely hates spiders, let alone spiders this big. And the reason I was laughing is because my kids keep playing with this and leaving it all over the house in random spots. And it keeps freaking out my wife. So I think it's pretty funny. Anyway, gets me as well. I had, as a side note, I had a story where, and this is just my box of sort of extra sphagnum moss. When I was doing my undergraduate degree, I think at the end of that, I used to go to a place called Bundaberg up in Queensland, right, in the north, in the tropics here in Australia, and I was doing research on turtles, and I'm just watching all the fungus gnats fly out of this box. Damn. There's a whole bunch of them. You know what? Do I give them a spray? They'll be taken care of. So I would go up there during summer and be doing a bunch of stuff with the turtles, the sea turtles. So these would be green sea turtles. What else would they be? What are the softback ones called again? I've forgotten. But those and loggerheads, they would all come up on the beach, lay their eggs, everything like that. And you would have to be out there at night doing all the work, counting them, measuring them up and everything. And after your shift, you would often go and obviously have a shower before going back to bed. Just trying to get this fungus gnat, damn it. And I remember one day I was having a shower, came out, and felt like someone had just sort of brushed me on the shoulder. And it was kind of creepy because it was night, no one was there, and I was just like, the fuck? And when I turned sideways to look at whatever I thought it was that had sort of touched my arm, I saw this just like going like this towards my eyes. And it was an absolutely huge huntsman, about the size of my hand, sitting on my shoulder, trying to climb up onto my head, obviously trying to go high. And he'd obviously been climbing up the fence, and I'd put my shorts through the sort of, those fences that have the wooden lattices. I'd put my shorts through there, pulled the shorts out, and that was when I felt the movement up my arm. And he was obviously on the shorts, climbed up my arm, and then went here. And that freaked me out. But that's about as close as I've been to one of those guys sort of caressing my face, and that freaked me out. Scissors, I need scissors. But they are puppy dogs, guys. If you do find them here in Australia, they're not really anything you need to worry about killing or being that scared of. Even if they were to bite you, they're not that venomous that you're going to be put in hospital. In Australia, we only have 2 deadly spiders. The funnel web spider from Sydney, which is pretty frightening. If you have a look at these guys, really aggressive spiders and horrifying. They can bite through a toenail with their huge fangs. And the other spider is a redback spider. And I don't think there's been any deaths in Australia since, I think, for about 50 years or so. It's been ages. So spiders are freaky looking, but in Australia they're not really that sort of much to worry about. So don't be afraid of Australia if you come here, guys. I don't know. It's one of those weird things. Like, Australia has all these creepy crawlies that people are always whinging about and saying, fuck coming to Australia, screw that for a joke. And we Australians are always looking at people in, say, North America and South America with your big cats and your bears and everything, and just being like, how are you guys afraid of spiders when you've got these huge fucking carnivores roaming around just eating cyclists and bushwalkers and stuff? Like, how does that make sense? You're afraid of spiders and snakes? All right, so I'm going to chuck the moss in around the base here. And as you've seen, I cut a hole on this side just so that it can go around the base of the plant. And I sort of bring the bottom up close. What I will do is staple back the side where the plastic what do you call it? Like the part where it joins up. I've stapled that back together so that I can get a seal again. And I will also staple up the side of the plastic here that I cut open, just to make sure that as much of that moisture as possible stays in. And I often sort of push the leaves together as much as possible. There's an opening here at the top, I don't know if you can see that, where I can obviously put water in if I need, if the moss gets dry. And I usually staple behind that part so that it won't keep opening up. So there's that I've done. And now the bottom section here, I might shove a little bit more moss in just to cover up the other side of the bag here and make sure that the roots have contact with the wet, moist moss, just to make sure that, yeah, they're getting as much stimulus as possible to grow those roots. Okay, so I do that. At the bottom, I'm kind of making sure, you won't be able to see, that it's kind of pinched around the base of the plant, like so. Again, just to try and hold in as much of this moisture as possible. The more holes that you have sort of open and exposed, the more moisture is going to escape, and you have to really keep an eye on it. And it kind of gets hard if the moisture is escaping at the bottom and constantly going into your medium below. You may end up overwatering if you're not careful. So yeah, anyway, that's effectively the deal. You just want, the basic principle is that you want to have some plastic, Glad wrap, cling wrap if you're American or whatever, or if you're not Australian, one of these Ziploc bags, whatever it is, a plastic bag, and you want to make sure that the moss is sort of pushed around the roots and that as much of that moisture is going to stay in there as possible. So you want to limit the number of gaps and holes and the size of those gaps and holes in the bag. So again, I'm looking at the top here. I can kind of see, I wonder if I can hold this leaf up a little bit and Ziploc this shut a little further. There we go. And I'm just going to, again, staple over the top of this section here to just hold that shut, and have the hole above where moisture can escape if it needs. Again, sorry, the leaves are getting in the way. And I can also sort of keep an eye on it. I'll give it a squeeze and make sure that it's sort of not too moist, but soft when I squeeze it. If it gets sort of crunchy and hard, you know it needs hydrating, it needs water, and you don't want that to be in that condition for too long, or else the roots will end up drying out and dying. And if I need to water it, I can just spray water in this hole using, you know, my little sprayer. So that's the basic idea. All right, so that's the first two nodes. And then we can just repeat the process for the next two up here. And I'm just trying to think of the best way of doing this. Probably just the same thing again. Sometimes if the leaves on a plant are small enough, you can kind of just cut a hole here, or you can cut the bottom and just slide the bag over. And in fact, maybe we try that. So I'm going to cut the bottom off the bag instead of the side this time. So I'm going to do that. Jesus, bag's moving around and making me cut all jaggedy plastic lines. All right, there we go. Good enough. Okay, so I put a hole in the bag, and what I'm going to try and do is get this over that top leaf and lower it down, and then pinch the base underneath the bottom node there that I want to air layer. Okay, so I'm just going to gently put this leaf through. It should fit okay. Taking this growth point as well, this new leaf coming out of that, gently, gently. So I'm just going to lower this down, 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 down. Sweet. There we go. Okay, so basically, I'm going to bring this down to the bottom here, and you've got sort of multiple options. You can staple it, obviously, or you could say tie it off using a zip tie like this. And maybe instead of stapling it this time, we'll do that. So what you can do is, I might, do I ziplock first? Do I tie it off first, or do I chuck the moss in first? I might tie it off first. So I'm just going to try and gently, sort of awkward with these leaves, I'm going to try and gently scrunch everything together here, and then take this tape, and with a bit of pressure, I'm putting the soft side, not the Velcro side. That probably doesn't matter with the bag here. And I'm just trying to apply a little bit of pressure and get a good seal, relatively good seal on the bag at the bottom here. And then go over the top and just wrap this guy around. It doesn't have to be too tight, it just has to be enough to sort of hold the moss in place again. It doesn't need to be airtight, but just good enough to make sure that things don't move too much. Okay, so I can slide him down there. Hopefully you guys can see what I've done. You can see a bit of the bottom of the plastic coming out here, and the bag is open here around the node that is right here, and there's another node here. So I'm probably going to try and bring it up. I'm not sure, maybe I'll just do the bottom node first, and I'll allow this one to develop a little bit as this new leaf comes out, and then I can always just open this bag up, move it up, and then close it again. That might be the best course of action here. Okay, so open this guy up. Again, getting about a handful size of moss. I usually get more than I think I need because it's better to have a bit too much than not enough, as there's sort of a certain threshold at which the moss will just needs to be passed or it just dries out really, really quickly, right? So if you use like really, really small amounts of moss, you'll notice that it dries out really, really quickly. Whereas if you sort of have more than you need, as long as the moisture isn't over the top, it'll just stay moist for potentially months at a time. There have been plants that I've air layered like this, and if I use like an entire Ziploc worth of moss like this on the node, one, there's more space for the roots to sort of grow and develop into, and two, I don't have to keep an eye on it all the time, squeezing it, making sure that it's moist and everything like that, because I know that it's going to take ages, especially if it's sort of sealed up pretty well, for the water to evaporate out. Okay, so there you go. We've got the moss sort of all around that node, 360 degree. Just want to sort of make sure that it's in place. It's not too densely packed, right? You don't want to sort of really squash it in. You want there to be sufficient air in there, but sufficient moisture as well. And then we are going to close this Ziploc bag up. I might just do it from each side and then put a staple on each side as well. It's probably just going to be the easiest course of action. And again, just leaving a bit of space at the top for me to be able to get my little water squirter in if I need, and rehydrate the moss if it decides to dry out. Okay, so that's sort of all there really is to it, guys. Like, I know it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, and obviously if you're wanting to use this plant as a presentation plant or something, you're probably not going to be wanting to do it this way because, yeah, it kind of does detract from the appearance of the plant. But because I'm trying to use this as an initial investment plant to grow out, I want to hopefully propagate this and get at least, 4 plants out of it. And the reason I think I'll get 4 out of this, at least currently, is because all of the leaves have quite significant green and white variegation on it. So the variegation's pretty balanced. There's a few half moon leaves here, which is great. But if you end up with like whole white leaves, I'm not sure if you would actually be able to propagate them very easily because the leaves aren't going to have much chlorophyll in them in order to be able to photosynthesize. And so you may end up with the leaves dying off rapidly and then maybe a wet stick. However, if the leaf is obviously all white, the node on the wet stick might activate and it might all be white as well. So you might end up with a sort of full mooned, ghosted plant after that, and it may not be viable. So that's why if I see leaves come out that are full moon, right, completely white or even majority white, I won't usually consider them as sort of a single cutting to take in the future. Whereas if you have a good balance of variegation, usually that means, each of these cuttings hopefully will take, and if they do, they'll become their own plant that you could then use as a mother plant or you could sell, whatever you want. Man, today's going to be a long video. Sorry, I got a drink here, got some coffee. Okay, so I guess we'll do the next one. I'm not sure how much to sort of chat through this one, seeing as it's effectively repeating the same thing, a bit of fluff here. I like how this guy, when he sold it to me, he's very delicately kind of put these braces on the leaves to kind of keep them together, which is really cool, and he's just used the horticultural tape and wrapped it around each side to sort of keep these 2 leaves together. I thought it was very clever. Yeah. All right, so I guess we're only doing 2 nodes on this one. I'm wondering if I can use just a single bag. I probably can. The easiest thing might be to, trying to think, open up the side, maybe a bit of the bottom, and then just staple it back up. Because I don't think I'll be able to get all those leaves through the top of the bag easily. It's going to be a bit finicky, so probably just easiest to cut the bag open and then staple it back together. One thing that I've also noticed, guys, something to pay attention to, you may, when propagating like this, want to ensure that the lowest part of the bag has some kind of a hole to allow excess moisture to come out. I have noticed on, I'm trying to think which plant it is, it's either my Albo, one of my Albos, or one of the Thai constellations. I've air layered it like this, and I left it with a little pocket like this at the bottom where water ended up collecting, and it may have just been from condensation, evaporating out of the moss, condensing on the plastic, and then sort of, sliding down the plastic using gravity to get to the bottom. And what I noticed is that the roots started rotting there at the bottom when they were sitting in the water. So even though there is a really nice root system inside of the plastic Ziploc bag there that I'm using to air layer the plant, because water is catching right at the bottom and the roots are just sitting there in this stagnant water, that I noticed I hadn't let a hole form there to allow that excess water to drip off, the roots started rotting. So something to be aware of is that, if roots are sitting in water inside these bags, if they're situated like this and the bottom here is collecting water, you may just want to cut a tiny little hole in the bottom to allow that water to come out. Even if it's really slowly, just allow it to sort of fall out with gravity, and hopefully not sort of get stuck all around the roots and cause them to rot. Because you obviously want to give, your plants the best chance possible at propagating and doing well. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of, how do I want to do this? I guess I want to staple as close to the plant here as possible to sort of bring everything together. All right, there we go. Boom. Doesn't have to be perfect. There is a bit of a gap there. But again, as I said, I want water to be able to, any excess water to just sort of, flow through. I should probably finish stapling up the side of the bag here so that I can form my little pocket and put moss into it. I'm just going to be really liberal with the staples. Okay. So here we go. Just putting that moss all around the node, trying to make sure that those roots have good contact from all sides, because they end up, especially on these philodendrons, I've noticed that they sort of end up growing out in every direction. They sort of form like a crown all around the node, and so you don't necessarily want to just put moss on one side, because even if you don't see roots on one side, they may form later, and you want them to be able to obviously grow well. All right. Just getting some moss closer up the top here too. This one might be sort of stuffed quite full. Wondering if I can get these cables out of the bag. Okay, might staple up the side here too. I've got to try and put the yellow and the red, what are they, kind of like little grooves that seal the bag together properly so that I can seal it after I've stapled it together. Because if it's not sealing properly and you staple it, it can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Pain in the behind. Okay. There we go. So I'm just going to try and shove a bit more moss on the top here, as that node is really high up, and I want to make sure that it has decent contact with the moss. It's quite a lot in this bag, but hopefully it's all good. It's all learning. It's all a learning, what would you say, chance of learning, right? A learning experience. Okay, so I'm going to zip that down to there. Oops, that was a bit loud. And then shut it with the stapler. And then hopefully I can do the other side and sort of gently put these leaves together. They're going to sort of get pushed together a little bit because the opening, I don't want the opening of the bag to be too much. but I don't want to snap the leaves off either. Okay, it's easier said than done. All right, okay, hold that. I'm just going to hold them together and then staple there too. Sweet. And I can kind of see that the bag has kind of moved down a little bit. It's because of this leaf. So I'm just going to chuck a bit more moss in here to again try and get that to cover that node as it's right at the top there. Again, it doesn't have to be the prettiest thing in the world, it just has to be functional. All right. I think that will do the trick. Wish me luck. All right. So there you go. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it should do the trick. And I'm just thinking about the side here. What you can do again is just fold things over and just sort of staple them up again, just to try and limit the amount of airflow. You can fold the edges over too. Should have probably done that a little bit more. And then stapled it. Bang, okay, sweet. So there are, and I can probably take this off, there are the two white variegated Philodendron Florida Beauties. And I'm looking forward to seeing these guys root so that I can chop them up, hopefully sell off a few of them to cover the cost of them, but then get some really nice, well-established mother plants here to just keep growing out and taking more and more cuttings from. So yeah, there you go. All right, I'm going to chuck them back on the shelf and we will get into the next task. Okay. This one might require me to kind of change the angle so that you can see a little more easily what I'm up to. So forgive the shitty angle and the mess. But I have one of the Albos that I bought when I first sort of started getting into these rarer plants, and it just keeps shooting out leaves, guys. This thing has really long internodes, so it's a bit spaced out. And I've air layered it, and you can see that the roots are going nuts inside the cling wrap here, Glad wrap, that I've used for air layering. The only annoying thing is that because it's growing so fast, I'm not sure if you can see there, every single time I'm sort of ready to chop it up, it's shooting out another leaf. So I have to keep waiting for these leaves to harden off because I don't want to take a cutting and then have the leaf die on me. I'd like a growing point that's going to be really nice. Yeah, oh, here's a good example too. I'm not sure if you can see, but right here, let's see if I bring it in closer, you can see that there's water pooling here at the bottom. So that's not ideal. It may have happened because I watered this yesterday, so that could be the problem, and I would just keep an eye on that and see if this plant sucks that water up. But if it doesn't and it sits there for quite a while, and I can see that the root tip here is fine and healthy. If it sits there for too long and starts to go brown, that's when I would be like, okay, need to cut it and let that water out. So anyway, the reason I got this girl over here is because the roots in some of these, I don't know if you can see that, they've penetrated through the Glad wrap. And this was a really funny example. This one, I'm not sure if you can see it, but originally it went through and browned off and stopped growing. And then recently the tip has sort of created a new tip to itself out on the side, and it has started to regrow. So it's a yellow tip here. So I wanted to take the Glad wrap off and put it back on. And you can see the same thing's happened here. These roots have escaped and they've browned off and stopped growing. And these ones are in the process of doing that. They only just got out of here yesterday. In fact, I was noticing, I was keeping an eye on them, and that's when I was like, oh crap, I've got to do something. So I think what I'm going to do is take the Glad wrap off. I can probably just use these bags. I guess we'll just see how we go. I might start with the bottom one. Worst case scenario, I can just use Glad wrap again. Otherwise, I'll just use the Ziploc bags because, yeah, they're just a little easier to manage. So this is going to be interesting too to see how well these have rooted. I'm actually really impressed at this sort of method and just the root growth on each of these nodes. See, even this one right at the top that I only did, it was probably about a week ago, that root has already, shot out to the edge here through all the moss and is starting to work its way around. So very effective method if you want to have a root system on your cuttings prior to taking cuttings and give them the best chance possible. I probably don't need to really take the moss off. I'm just going to use a bag. What I might do is, what's the easiest way of doing this? I think I'm going to chuck it on an angle like this, on this side. So I'll need to take off probably just the corner of one of these bags, enough to be able to sort of slide it up and over. There we go, perfect. Up and over the roots here. Good job. All right, there we go. Again, so what I'm going to do here is sort of tighten it around the edge. And sorry if you're a little far away. See if I can come in and bring you guys in a little bit. Sorry about the bumpiness. So I'm going to try and sort of bring the bottom of the bag up to the base of where those roots are coming out. Cinch the top of it down. You could probably close it over like this too. And you could either use some of the tape or you could just staple it. So I think what I'm going to do is fold it over itself a couple of times, like so, and then just give it a single staple this time. Be a little more efficient. There we go. Maybe 2 for good measure. So it's on the bag like this. Again, I'm going to, as I was telling you before, because I know this point down here is going to collect water, I'm just going to cut the smallest sort of edge of it off, right? If I can actually use scissors correctly. So I just want a tiny little hole there so that water doesn't gather. There we go. So I've just cut a tiny, tiny, tiny little triangle off. I don't even think you can... I lost it. I was going to show you, but I lost it. Okay, so now I'm just going to open it up. We will bring over the moss bucket and chuck in some extra moss for these roots to hopefully keep growing into until I am ready to finally give this thing the chop. Okay, in you go. And again, I'm just being pretty liberal with the moss, and you just want to make sure that it is kind of not too compact, but around the roots. There we go. That's probably good enough. And then I'm just gonna, I don't need to staple the top here. I can just seal it shut. And if I need to add more liquid in there, I can do that. And you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to try and reuse this Glad wrap to just support the bag. So what I can do is kind of stretch the Glad wrap out and hopefully stick it to itself. See how this method goes. First time trying this. So I'm trying to create like a little bit of a hammock for this guy. There we go. Because I could use more tape and everything, but in the spirit of recycling what I'm using, hopefully this gives it some basic support. Look at that, it's almost perfect. There we go. Ugly but perfect. I don't need that bit. Perfect for the job. All right, sweet. So hopefully that holds it in place like so. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this one. I think we're gonna have to do this one as well. And then the other two here, you can see this one, the tip here is rotted off because it's gotten through the bag. I think I'm gonna have to do all of them except the most recent one. All right, well, I guess we'll just keep going and see what we have as we unwrap these guys. Yeah, this guy went right through the bag. Out you come. Okay. And I think I'm just going to keep repeating this process. Jesus. I think too it was really funny because I air laid this guy and within a week he had already just gone whoosh, straight through the bag. So I think he must have just had the perfect angle and yeah, had little to no resistance as he was going through the Glad wrap here. I just found that really funny at the time. I was like, ah, god damn it. Okay, can I do the same thing again? Let's see, I think I might just cut a corner off. Open it up. And see if I can just put all the roots in. Good. Seems to be working well. Good, good, good. Bring it all the way up the top. I'm just going to turn it around. Sorry guys, got to be able to see properly what's going on. Loads of roots all over the place. This is amazing. Okay, so I have just sort of wedged the bag up and around the moss ball here with the roots in it. And I am going to on this side, what am I going to do? I'm trying to work out what to do with these roots at the bottom here and how to sort of angle them forwards, because I don't want them to find their way into a corner, because that's when they either go through the bag or end up sort of rotting with the water that can condense there. All right, so I might do that. There we go. And I'll just collect this together and give it a staple. Okay, all right, looks good. The root from above is trying to sneak in. Get out of it, mate. Wait your turn. Get some more moss in there. Some down the bottom. This is sort of fun with the opening kind of pointing down. Okay, zip up the bag from the bottom, and I might just staple it to give myself a bit of help so that it doesn't open up as I shove some more moss in here. And hopefully this root tip that's just activated again is going to grow like crazy, because ideally what I want is to be able to take these cuttings and just chuck them straight into soil and or just sell them. So, you know, I don't have to worry about rooting them. I don't have to worry about them sort of maturing a little more. I can just, you know, take the cuttings and they're off and they're gone to the races. I'm also kind of curious how much I could probably cut these and just leave them in situ on the pole, especially once they have these kind of root balls developed. I'm wondering if I could just, you know, separate the vine, and that would allow the growth points for each node to activate. That might be a very efficient way of kind of speeding things up. Okay, so I'm going to try and give this a brace again. There you go. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that it's not too tight, because you want the roots to have space to breathe, you want there to be oxygen, you want there to be moisture, and you obviously want them to be able to grow into that space. So let me just pick up some of this moss. I'm going to end up using this entire box. All right, that's an interesting looking, bit of an eyesore, this plant, but hopefully function over beauty, guys. It's like what I say to my wife. She married me. Function over beauty. Function over beauty. All right. Okay, we might be in a bit of trouble here, as that was supporting the entire vine here at the top. Let's see. Perhaps I can use this bit of Glad wrap, layer it together, and then give the top bit here some support that it needs without doing it any damage. Oh, okay, maybe not. Maybe just don't be lazy and get yourself some of the Velcro and use that, Pete. Okay, let's see. Oh, just lost it off the table, rolled away. Whoops. Okay. Let's see if I can use this to do the job for now. At least this is sort of easy to move around. All right, good job. Okay, so I'm going to try and undo this guy and then just repeat this process, guys. All right. Go. Same thing, roots are really nice. Look at that, beautiful. I love seeing these yellow tips on these roots. It's just, you know, it's when you know the plants are doing really well, and just, yeah. Happy father, happy father. Plant dad. Okay, this one's going to be an interesting one. How am I going to do this? Might have to cut down the side of the bag this time and wedge it through. This is sort of the fun part of keeping indoor plants, guys. The propagation process and just the amount of problem solving that you kind of have to go through, I find really, really enjoyable. And growing plants in general, right? You got to work out what's wrong with it. How do I get it to thrive? Why is it not doing well? You know, especially when you run into these problems. A lot of the time in life, you can kind of run away from those sorts of issues because, you know, too hard basket. But I think you end up missing out on a lot of satisfaction that you get when you do run into a problem and you end up solving it. So, you know, although in the moment it tends to be a massive pain in the butt and stressful and everything, the satisfaction that you get from problem solving is just, you know, phenomenal. So yeah, I think that's why I enjoy this hobby, this pastime so much, because you just, although it is a pain in the bum sometimes and you have huge problems and you feel like you're a shit person, you know, with a black thumb and everything, when you do end up solving the issue, man, you feel good. You feel amazing, right? Let's change the angle here a bit for you guys. Okay. Now, let's see. All right, I'm going to try and zip this guy up together and then give him a staple at the top. Okay. Oof. Oof. There we go. So hopefully you can see there that I've got this hole in the side, and I probably didn't, oh no, I kind of did need to cut down the bottom there. I'm just going to seal it up so that I can have some support for the moss that I'm going to chuck inside. There we go. And then we will just fill this pocket up with some moss. And again, because I've got this little corner right at the bottom here, I'm just going to open it up to allow any water to come out. So I've cut this little part of the bag off, just to let that water flow out if it ends up sort of, what would you say, running off and collecting at the bottom there. All right, keep going, making a mess. Okay, so let me just turn this around and see what I've done here. I want to get a bit more moss around the backside here to make sure that it's got some moss in contact with the roots over there and there's a bit of space for it to grow into. I'm also going to zip this bit up and staple over that as well. Keep that shut. And then maybe one or two little pinches left, and that'll be that one. It's probably enough. Okay, so I'm just going to collect the plastic together here and kind of roll it up over itself and then staple it shut. Keep that moisture in. Okay, so we've done 3 so far. Does that come off? I guess we'll try that again. Okay, maybe it is not going to hold on too well. The glad wrap idea was a cute idea, but it hasn't worked so well, so I might just use some of this green tape. And I'm reusing ones that I've already cut up. Okay, good support there. And I guess we will try and do this last one. I'm just getting this root out of this little bag that I created here. And they're probably, to be honest guys, these are probably all ready to cut up. It's just that I'm waiting for this top leaf to harden off so that I can get a decent cutting up there without ruining the leaf as it's coming out, as it also looks like a really beautiful one with really good marbled variegation. So, okay. Go. So yeah, loads of root tips. What I can see here out of this node, there's like 5 of them I can see coming out, which is great. That means that there are secondary roots coming off that original aerial root. Oh, what's going on? Jeez, there's a big fat root here. It's actually grown down into the bag below. That was the issue that I'm having there. So this will be interesting. All right, I guess we will do the same thing again. I'm going to take this support off and try and raise it up a bit out of the way. Okay, yeah, you can see a whole bunch of these tips even growing into the next bag above. Okay, so here is what I'm working with. How am I going to do this? I think it's going to be the same deal again. Cut down the side of the bag. It's going to be the easiest way to do this. So this video is getting pretty long, guys. I hope you're not too bored with just me air layering, because I might have to get to the next, turn this into 2 videos, right, with my tasks, as I don't know how many of you are going to end up watching hours and hours of me just rabbiting on about air layering. But we'll see how we go. Okay, so I'm going to take this around, bring it around the back. So we've got plenty of space here at the front. Holding the back together, and I am going to fold it over itself. Staple it together. Sorry if you can't see what I'm doing, guys. I have folded the bag over the back here and just stapled it so that it supports itself. The sort of pocket is here at the front. Going to repeat that thing that I did before, chopping the bottom of the bag triangle bit off so that water can drain out. Now I need to also connect the top of the bag together here so that it's going to zip lock into itself, and I am going to staple that together. Boom. Okay, so there we go. And now I'll just fill this guy up with moss. So yeah, you guys will have to let me know down in the comments below if you guys have been using this sort of a method and what your success has been like. You know, have you found certain plants love it, certain plants don't? What are the times that it normally takes you guys to propagate using this kind of a method if you use this sort of air layering? Hopefully if Kevin from Hakuna La Planta sees this video, he'll be proud of me using his method. Well, whether or not it was his, I don't know, but he was definitely the one that I saw using this when I was like, man, that's a really good idea. And you know, the other cool thing that he does is often if he takes cuttings and they're having a hard time, he'll just put them in a bag. Like he'll take the cutting and shove it in a bag with moss and then just ziplock it, you know, where the cutting is coming out of the top, and then just lie it down under a light. And I've actually done that over here. I've got some Philodendron atabapoens, and I use that method and it has worked wonders. So I definitely recommend just Ziploc bags and moss. You know, you effectively only need those 2 things, and you can, well, you need water as well, but you can propagate well using those 2 materials, which is just, it's just wonderful when you don't need a really, really complicated setup, right? So there's a root at the top here that I'm just wanting to make sure is in contact with the moss. Okay, that is probably sufficient. I'm kind of gonna just ziplock it around the bum of this other bag above, because it's Glad wrap. When it comes in contact, it'll sort of seal shut pretty well. And yeah, staple over the top there. And yeah, position everything a little closer to the roots, and I can probably bring this guy down and around the hips of this bag to give it a bit of support. Hold it in place. There we go, that's nice. Sweet. There we go, and there's a hole in the top here if I need to chuck water in to propagate it. Yeah, toilet paper. The toilet paper I have here sitting on top of this coca coir pole, because it was damaging the leaf that is resting right on top of the pole. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's a leaf. Since I got it, it's had this leaf. So since I've got it, it's pushed out. It must have been pushing this out when I got it, and it's done 1, 2, 3 since then. But this leaf is resting right on top of the pole there constantly, and the sharp parts of the coca coir keep sort of stabbing it and giving it damage. So I had sort of just rested a little bit of toilet paper there to give it some delicate, nice, soft support. And if it shits itself, it'll be able to clean up. So anyway, guys, I think that's probably enough for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed this air layering tutorial. And again, yeah, let's get into the comments. Tell me if you guys have any advice or tips, tricks for how to air layer effectively, what you found works the best. And YouTube reckons you're going to enjoy this video. I hope you do. I'll see you there. Tooroo.